The night before this film was supposed to prove itself, one day after the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, Top Gun had its first test screening in Houston. Nobody laughed. Nobody clapped. The producer said it felt like a funeral. The director called it the worst experience of his life. And by the end of this video, you will understand how that same film became the biggest movie in America 5 months later. Think about the first time you heard that music, the jets catching the sun on a carrier deck, the specific feeling that the world had no ceiling and speed was the answer to everything. Top Gun made $360 million worldwide on a budget of 15. It sent young men into Navy recruitment offices across the country, and the story behind it is one of disaster, near misses, and a director who almost didn't survive his own premiere week. If these are the films that made you feel like anything was possible, this channel was built for you. Subscribe before we start. We are starting at number 10, and before we begin, understand this. The director almost wasn't the director. 2 other filmmakers turned this project down before he ever got the call. Number 10 tells you exactly how close this film came to never existing in the form you know. Pay attention. Let's go. Number 10, 2 directors said no. His own brother got him the job. Both John Carpenter and David Cronenberg turned down the chance to direct Top Gun. 2 of the most distinctive horror and thriller filmmakers of their generation looked at a script about Navy fighter pilots and passed. The project needed someone else. Producer Jerry Bruckheimer remembered convincing Tom Cruise to join using the relationship between director Tony Scott and his brother Ridley Scott, who had worked with Cruise the previous year on Legend. Tony Scott came from a background directing television commercials with a specific instinct for visual spectacle. Bruckheimer and Don Simpson decided that instinct was exactly what a film built on speed and light needed. 2 acclaimed directors walked away. A commercials director with a famous brother walked in, and convincing his lead actor required something considerably more dramatic than a phone call. Number 9, Cruise was terrified. They sent him up in a real jet. He ran to a payphone. Tom Cruise was hesitant about signing on. Bruckheimer later described what happened next. So they take Tom up there and they do 5Gs, they do barrel rolls, they do everything. He's heaving in the plane. Cruise was physically sick from the maneuvers. The moment the jet landed, he ran across the tarmac to a payphone and called the production. "I'm in," he said. "I'm doing the movie. I love it. This is great." A man who had just been violently ill from G-forces and barrel rolls sprinted to a phone to commit to spending the next 6 months filming exactly that experience. Whatever convinced Cruise that day was not comfort, it was the opposite, and it worked completely. And one scene that almost wasn't in the script at all became the film's most unexpected cultural moment. Number 8, one line of volleyball in the script, shot in a single day, became immortal. The original screenplay by Jim Cash and Jack Epps Jr. contained exactly one line referencing volleyball. That is the entire scripted presence of the scene that would become one of the most parodied sequences in 1980s cinema. Director Tony Scott spotted the beach location during scouting and decided it could be something more. He wrote a rough outline overnight and shot the entire sequence in a single day, telling the cast to actually compete and play hard so it would look genuinely real. One line became one of the most quoted scenes of the decade, referenced and parodied so often that Top Gun Maverick built a direct shot-for-shot callback to it 36 years later. Tom Cruise insisted at the time that the scene was important to the story. Most audiences have simply remembered it as the volleyball scene. Both things can be true, and not everyone on set agreed with the film's approach to authenticity. Before we keep going, here is the question that matters. How old were you the first time you watched Top Gun? And who introduced it to you? Because this film was not discovered alone. Someone put it on. A father, an older brother, a friend who said, "Just watch." Drop both answers in the comments right now. How old and who was there? Number 7, real Navy officers complained. Scott's answer explained the entire philosophy of the film. During a break in filming the hangar scene, a group of Navy officers being used as extras approached Tony Scott and complained that the patches on the actors' flight suits were unrealistic and inaccurate. Scott's response became one of the most quoted production anecdotes in the film's history. "We're not making this movie for Navy fighter pilots. We're making it for Kansas wheat farmers who don't know the difference." That single line explains everything about how Top Gun was built, not as a documentary, not as a recruitment manual, even though it functioned as one, as a feeling. as a piece of visual mythology constructed for an audience who had never been near a carrier deck and never needed to be. The Navy officers were right about the patches. Scott was right about the audience. Both of them were correct simultaneously. And the danger that film embraced was not only in the script. Number 6. A real pilot died. Filming this movie, he was never found. Top Gun came face-to-face with the actual danger of flying when veteran Hollywood aerial cameraman Art Skoll was killed while shooting second-unit footage for Tony Scott. Skoll was flying a prop-driven biplane off the coast of San Diego, attempting to capture a flat spin sequence for the production. His aircraft crashed into the Pacific Ocean. His last words over the radio were reported as, "I have a problem. I have a real problem." Neither Scholl's body nor his aircraft were ever recovered. He was 53 years old. He had previously worked on Blue Thunder and The Right Stuff. The film carries a dedication to his memory in its closing credits, 4 words that most audiences have read 100 times without understanding what they represent. A real man, a real ocean, a real loss behind the most glamorous flying sequences of the decade. Stay with us, because what comes next is the night this entire film nearly fell apart. What happened in Houston, one day after the Challenger disaster, is the story that almost nobody outside the production has heard in full. Stay through facts 5 and 4, and number 1 is what happened after that disaster and how completely the film recovered. Keep going. Number 5, the test screening felt like a funeral. The director called it the worst day of his life. An advanced screening of Top Gun was scheduled for January 29, 1986 in Houston, Texas. The release of Iron Eagle 2 weeks earlier had performed only modestly, and Top Gun's commercial future as the second major fighter jet film of the year already felt uncertain. Then the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded the day before the screening, a national tragedy that shook the entire country. Bruckheimer recalled, "We're in that theater and I tell you it was like a funeral. I watched the movie with this audience and nobody reacted. They didn't laugh, they didn't applaud, it was nothing." Tony Scott felt the same devastation. "It was the worst experience of my life," he said. Both men walked out of that Houston theater believing they had made a film that was about to fail completely on the worst possible week to release anything involving aircraft and explosions. And what was happening behind the camera during production was its own quiet tension. Number 4, they didn't get along. A song changed the whole romance. Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis reportedly did not have much chemistry off camera, and by several accounts simply did not get along during production. They briefly reunited at a film premiere in 2010 and were reportedly content to go their separate ways again afterward. The romance that defined the film for an entire generation was constructed largely through editing, music, and direction, rather than any real connection between the two leads. Tony Scott was personally captivated by Berlin's demo recording of Take My Breath Away, so moved by it that he added additional romantic scenes specifically to give the song somewhere to live in the film. The chemistry audiences felt watching Maverick and Charlie was, in significant part, manufactured by a director responding to a piece of music rather than anything happening organically between two actors who did not particularly care for each other. 2 facts left, and number 1 is the recovery nobody expected after that Houston disaster. Number 3, they strapped cameras. To reel a F-14S, one camera got just a single shot per flight. Most of the aerial dogfight footage in Top Gun was not built from miniatures or models. It was shot using real F-14 Tomcats flown by actual Navy pilots, with cameras mounted directly onto the aircraft. Grumman, the company that built the F-14 itself, was commissioned to design custom external camera pods that could be attached to the jet and pointed either forward or backward depending on the shot needed. Inside each cockpit, the camera package was squeezed into the smallest possible footprint using 18mm, 35mm, and even 50mm lenses, the tightest configuration that could physically fit. Each film magazine held only 2 minutes of footage, which meant every single take gave the pilot just one opportunity to capture the shot before having to land and reload. For the air-to-air sequences, the production relied on a Learjet flown by Astrovision inventor Clay Lacy, fitted with a periscope-style camera system that let it fly alongside an F-14 in mid-flight and film it from the outside. This was the first time 35mm film had ever flown inside an F-14 cockpit. The Navy was still using 16mm at the time. Paramount paid the Navy up to $7,800 per hour, roughly $18,500 today, every time a jet was flown specifically for the production, rather than for routine operations. The result was the most authentic aerial footage audiences had seen since the dawn of cinema. No miniatures, no green screen, just real jets, real Navy pilots, and a camera with exactly one chance to get it right before the film ran out. One more fact before the end, and it is about an actor who almost said no before anyone said yes. Number 2, 8 other actors said no before Cruise said yes. Before Tom Cruise committed to playing Maverick, the production approached Patrick Swayze, Emilio Estevez, Nicolas Cage, John Cusack, Matthew Broderick, Sean Penn, Michael J. Fox, Scott Baio, and Tom Hanks. Every single one of them showed no real interest in the role. 9 names, 9 declines. The role that would define Tom Cruise's career for the next 4 decades was, at one point, considered and passed over by nearly every leading young actor in Hollywood. Cruise's eventual yes, delivered breathlessly from a payphone after a punishing test flight, came only after every other reasonable option had been exhausted. Sometimes the role that becomes iconic was never anyone's first choice. It was simply the one person left standing when the search finally ended. Number 1, 5 months after the funeral, it was the biggest film in America. Despite the disastrous Houston screening, despite a director who called it the worst experience of his life on the same week the nation was mourning the Challenger crew, Top Gun was released in May 1986 and became the highest-grossing film of the entire year. $177 million domestically, $360 million worldwide. It outsold Crocodile Dundee. It outsold Platoon, one of the most acclaimed war films of the decade. Tell us in the comments, who was in the room with you the first time that door opened and the color came through? Because that person matters. That moment matters. Write it down, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you are here for the first time, welcome. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. We will see you in the next one.